Good morning. Happy Feast of St. Lawrence, Deacon and Martyr. I just finished reading, praying the lauds, and it was all about St. Lawrence and flames and not smelling of burning and that sort of thing. So I'm kind of in a rush, so I'm going to try and get through a lot of stuff. But what I'm planning to do is do an 8-video series on how I channeled that inexorable gravitational pull towards curriculum when I knew that it was probably a waste of money and it wasn't going to work for my family, and that unschooling really was a better way to do things. But I was insecure, and every time, especially at this time of the year, everybody else is, all they're talking about is curriculum, and they're so in love with their new curriculum, and they're just so convinced that it's going to be the answer and be the perfect fit for their family and all that stuff. And it would feed on my insecurity, and I would just buy stuff. And at the end of this video, I'll tell you the 5 different ways that my family responded to curriculum and why most of the time it didn't work. But first of all, one housekeeping thing. I am going to mail this out today, so you know who you are. I plan to get to the post office today. So that's going to go out. That's the giveaway, the gramophone wooden 3D puzzle. So that's one thing. Let me put that aside. And then I also wanted to mention 3 resources that, especially, I want to do it now because it's a little bit time sensitive. One of them is. And also, if you're in the throes of fighting off that curriculum fever where, you just want to buy, and you're absorbed in all the catalogs and you're watching all the videos of all the women who are the perfect classrooms, and, they have everything set up just so. These 3 resources might be something that sort of can, deflect away from that anxiety that sort of thing, that pressure that sort of thing puts on one. So there's 3 of them. So the first one is a Catholic one. It's called, it's the Saint, I never say this right, is it Kateri or Kateri Conservation Center. So I always say Kateri, so I'm sorry if that's the wrong way to say it. I just sort of default to that pronunciation. But the St. Kateri Conservation Center, sort of an online organization that started way back. It was this tiny little thing I think it started under Pope Benedict, but it's been inspired by Laudato Si since then, and it's grown and grown and grown. It's wonderful because it's a faithful Catholic organization with a devotion to St. Kateri or Kateri, and they promote, the cutting edge science on how to be good stewards to creation. Excuse me, I always cough in the middle of, I can't talk without getting a frog in my throat. Anyway, so I will link below. I'll link to all these resources below. But so it's a really neat organization to check out, especially if you're into nature study and that sort of thing. They have this really cool thing called a St. Kateri Habitat certification, and you can get your parish to participate. And it's basically like, doing the best practices of gardening, like, planting pollinating, plants that support pollinators, and getting rid of invasive species and putting in native plants and that sort of thing. But they also include Mary gardens, and so it's really neat. It's like a Catholic twist on that. But the thing that they're doing, and it starts August 15th, which is the Feast of the Assumption, I think, and goes to August 29th, I believe. I mean, I might have the little details wrong, but it's coming up really soon. I know it's starting on the 15th. It's a bio blitz. So what they're doing is they're cooperating with, and I forget if it's Cornell University, Cornell Labs, which I think they always partner with Journey North, which is another really good program for homeschoolers and unschoolers. But I think it's the Audubon Society. I can't remember which one they're partnering with. But what you do is you download the free app iNaturalist. And then from August 15th to August 29th, You snap pictures of flora and fauna you see in your yard or on your parish grounds or wherever you are, and you join this community of nature lovers and amateur naturalists and scientists to try to gather data. Um, and so it's a really fun thing to do. It's really easy to do. Whole families can do it together. And it starts August 15th. And all sorts of, like, I know a parish here is going to participate. I'm planning to participate. So it's fun and it's really easy. So I'll link below. So that was the first resource. The second resource is one that I've just discovered myself. Someone just mentioned it like last week, and I was like, oh, this sounds like exactly up my alley. And I think it's called, and again, I'll link, 1,000 Hours Outdoors. I think it's what it's called. And what it is it's they're trying to get people to get their kids outdoors more, because we have it exactly backwards. We think that it's good for children to sit at desk and do close, table work, and that's what is best for them, when really it's the opposite. You might need some of that, but kids need to be out in the fresh air and sunshine, getting that vitamin D, and running around playing, and even like vision. Like my kids always take vision therapy, and the vision therapist talked about how kids do too much close work too soon, and that our eyes are built to develop best by seeing broader. And that's what kids should be doing. They should be outside looking at the horizon and looking at distance. That helps their eyes develop better, and we don't do it enough. So this is a way of supporting you in the effort to try to get out more. And I think this is especially appropriate during this COVID age. And they have cute trackers. It's geared towards schools, but they have a section on homeschoolers. So that's the second resource. The third one is one that I just happened upon when I was cleaning through books, and I found this, Touch Pebbles. The program itself is called Touchstones, and I'll link below. And what it is if you are relaxed or unschooly, but you sort of have a yen for more classical learning, this teaches children how to think philosophically. And we did this 1 year in a co-op of just a couple other families. I wish I had discovered it sooner, and I wish I had done it more. There's all different levels. This is the elementary school level. It says grades 2 through 5, but actually you could have a kindergartner sit in or your 7th grader sit in. I think it spans wider than that. It's just that they had to break it up into elementary and middle and high school. And they have newer programs now. Like they have one just focused on service that I don't think existed when I was doing this. But anyway, and you can get books for the students. This is the teacher edition. But what I like about the teacher edition is that it's got, like, say you're learning about Pandora's box, right? They'll give you the background on it in this teacher's edition. There's a little worksheet you can do if your kids are into worksheets, but you don't have to. You can just make that an oral thing. But then they give you what was written in the student book, so you can just read that out loud or make a copy of it for your kids, or just have your kids read it before you sit down or something. And then you sit and they give you guided questions to ideas, to pull out the ideas, to think about the deeper meaning. And it's very classical. This one is from Tales from Around the World, but it also has picture study, so you can discuss various paintings. It has one of them, here's the histories by Herodotus. There's like a little excerpt. It's got something from Augustine's Confessions, when he's tempted to steal the pears. It's got another one from Plato's Republic about the ring, the ring that makes you invisible. And a lot of it's about self-control and resisting temptation, which is a good lesson for kids to learn. And then it even has a little math. They've got a little thing on definitions of a straight line. So it's very classical in orientation, but the thing is you can just pick it up and do it whenever you want. So you can spend a few weeks really into it, then you can put it down and months later pick it up again. It's not it's very, very flexible. And so I think it folds in really easily into a unschooling or a very relaxed homeschooling lifestyle. But at the same time, your kids are getting introduced to Play-Doh, they're getting introduced to geometry, they're getting introduced to folk tales from around the world, and just these deeper philosophical ideas. So I recommend this. I think it's a really good resource that is very easy to fold into your relaxed homeschool. All right, so those are my 3 resources. And there's a really loud bird behind me. But then I wanted to talk about curriculum or curriculas and how it's really hard to resist all the peer pressure, especially if you're insecure, and aren't we all? And we want to do the right thing for our kids, and if society is constantly telling us that this is the right thing, and it seems to work so well for other families, the grass is always greener. And then for me anyway, it always bombed, right? And it was just disappointment after disappointment. And it took me so long to learn to just let go that I had to listen to that still voice, the reading from Elijah yesterday. I had to listen to that still voice saying, you know what, it just doesn't work for us. But it doesn't matter, because the thing is, we have come to believe that curriculum equals education. And it doesn't. It's just one tool in the toolbox. You could never get curriculum for your kids. Well, maybe not in older grades when you have to learn math or something. But when they're young, at least, and for many subjects, even when they're older, you don't need actual curriculum. You just need books to read and exposure to ideas and the ability to explore. So curriculum is just one tool. And so I came to believe that you only used it when you absolutely needed to for that particular child for a particular reason. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right now talk about the 5 reactions that my family had to curriculum whenever I would introduce it. And then I'm going to start a series of 8 videos on 8 different ways that I channel that hole in my heart for curriculum, for the perfect answer, and that peer pressure and all that energy and anxiety that went into choosing curriculum, and what I channeled it into. And there were 8 different things I came up with. I've been thinking about this all weekend. And so I'm going to do 8 different videos, and then the 9th video I'm going to do a review of the curriculum that actually worked for us. So, but right now, the 5 ways that my family responded to curriculum. The first thing was I would get it and it was dead in the water. I remember Jensen's Grammar or something like that I had heard people rave about, people I admired, and I got the book and I opened it up and I thought, this isn't going to fly. I didn't understand how it was set up. I didn't like the way it looked visually. It was hard for me to read it. And I just couldn't unpack it, and I knew that it was just not going to work. Another one was, and I was really disappointed about this other one, was A Drawing with Children by Mona Brooks. Everybody was raving about this, and I got it, and I just couldn't figure out how to implement it. It was I don't know, the way it was set up. I felt like you had to be an art teacher already in order to really use it. And other people were raving about it, and it just sat on my shelf for years before I finally gave it away, just in defeat. It just didn't work. So there was curriculum like that where right off the bat just didn't work. Then we would get curriculum that would just fizzle out really quickly. Like it would seem okay, we would sit down and we would start it, and it would just fizzle out. Sometimes only after a couple of days, and sometimes, after a couple of weeks, what would happen was we'd get distracted, like we'd go on a field trip, or we'd have to have a day of errands, or there'd be some holiday, we'd be doing something else, and then we would simply forget to go back to it. I would just forget. It would just skate off the radar, And I remember one year, maybe my 3rd year into homeschooling, I was going to be a Mother of Divine Grace family, and I got all that stuff. And it was just it was dull as dishwater. To me, it didn't fit in a cohesive way. It was just really a checklist. And I heard so many people who love Mother of Divine Grace. It just didn't work. And we just drifted away without even consciously deciding to. We just sort of drifted away and did more meaningful things instead. It just didn't work. It was a waste. So that was the second way. So it was dead in the water, fizzling out, or just drifting away from it because it couldn't, we just never got hooked. It never held our interest. Or I would get something and it would be okay, but it was just something that we worked through, and there was no retention, there was no, there was nothing meaningful happening, so it would seem like a waste of money, like I invested more than I got out of it. Like I remember I had one son who got, one year we were trying to do some Colby stuff, and it was their vocabulary, Sadler, Oxford, is that what the name of the publisher, vocabulary. And he thought it was kind of fun. He would sit down and he would go through this vocabulary workbook and go real quick, and then he'd be done, and he'd have that sense of satisfaction. Absolutely very low retention at all. There was like a fun thing to do, to just like the little exercise, but there was nothing really meaningful going on. I don't think it helped his vocabulary. It was just sort of a motions to go through. So it was okay, and he would do it fairly willingly, but I didn't see any real learning going on. And then the fourth thing would be, we would get something and it was good. We were enjoying it, or at least one child would enjoy it, and then maybe the other kids would put up with it. But so it was enjoyable, and that sort of gave us enough to keep going and going through it. But there was like a curve, like we'd start off, and then we'd get hooked, and then there would be this point where it was pretty enjoyable, and I'd think, oh, okay, this is working. And then there would be the diminishing curve where even though it was enjoyable and everything, I would see that it was really limiting my kids' enjoyment of it, and it wasn't a very meaningful learning experience. And so even though it was good, if I compared it to learning that went on in an unschooling, more natural way, a more delight-directed way, it was really mediocre in comparison. Like it just, it just wasn't that exhilarating. It didn't generate joy. I mean, maybe a little joy, but not at the same depth, And so it was okay, we would get through it, but it wasn't, if that was all we did, it would start to get really dull. And then the last thing was curriculum that did work. And when it did work, it always worked because it just was practical and we could utilize it well. It got the job done. And so a lot of it's, when they were older, were just basic reading skills, because my kids had reading problems, or problems reading and starting reading. And so that's, so we wound up using some curriculum all through the years. And I'll do a video on that at the very last, the 9th. So I'm already at 18 minutes, which is terrible. I hope people are willing to watch this because it's longer. I'll try to give it some flashy title. So anyway, so this is the beginning of an 8 videos, or I guess 9 video series. This is the intro. So I will talk to you later, and have a blessed day. Bye-bye.